something that really enrages me, and that's toxic positivity.
I think you get burned out if you hate what you're doing at a certain time. So it basically feels like you are climbing a mountain.
We have a million tabs open. We joke about it amongst ourselves, like our emotional support tabs. It's almost like leaving yourself a trail of breadcrumbs as well.
All digital people need to find something outside of work that recharges them.
Everything I got taught about productivity is out of the window.
The next person that will actually say, I'm crashing it, I will punch them in the face, mentally at least.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Growth Mentor Live. Today, we are talking about mental health in the tech industry, because we thought it was time that we talked about how an industry so notorious for burning people out really does affect our mental health. I'm Micah McGuire, head of content here at Growth Mentor, and I am joined by Aggelos Mouzakitis, go-to-market and pricing consultant, and Helen Peatfield, copywriter and positioning consultant. We have got a ton to talk about today, guys. This is going to be a great conversation. Basically, you're going to want to make sure to have note-taking materials for all of the great tactics you're going to get. We will have a recording available, so if you're not able to join us for the entire session, that will be in your inbox next week after our video editor has had a chance to work her magic on it. And then ask your questions at any time during the session, and we'll be working Q&A in throughout. All right. Well, Aggelos, Helen, it is great to have you both here with us today. I really appreciate you guys jumping on to this topic.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Helen, from here, I guess I will jump off and let you guys start the conversation.
Okay. Thank you. So, Aggelos.
How are you, love?
Hi. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. How are you? I'm burning, actually.
Yeah, I'm good. You're boiling in Athens, right? You told me earlier it's like 43 degrees or something, and I am just dealing with the humidity in Thailand. People are probably not going to feel sorry for us if they're tuning in from somewhere colder, but yeah, we can complain.
Actually, I would appreciate moving somewhere colder now. So if anyone that listens at the moment would like to make an exchange, like come to Athens and me going to colder climates, it would be amazing.
Yeah, answers on a postcard if anyone wants to take in Aggelos for a little while. So Aggelos, yeah, I mean, maybe I'll start with the questioning.
Please.
Actually, it was your idea to come and do this. So yeah, why did we want to do this chat, and why did you want to discuss this topic? I'm going to wrap that in with like a little side question, because I happen to know, but maybe not everyone else does, that you've also studied psychology. You and I go back a while as peers and friends, so we know more about each other's minds, but not everything. Maybe we can kick it off there with, you know, what sort of spurred you into like looking into human psychology more in the beginning, and has that had any impact on how you look at things today?
Okay, let's start with the first one. What brought the idea? If I'm honest, the idea came out of sheer dissatisfaction and I'm quite annoyed by the state of today's LinkedIn. So it might seem small, but one of the reasons that I really wanted us to have this conversation, especially together, is because every day that I connect to LinkedIn, I see all these very successful and happy people, and all these amazing stories about how everybody skyrocketed their growth and how everybody is nailing it and crushing it. And the reason I wanted us to make this conversation is because during these last years that I'm actually doing that, I'm 36, so it's been quite a few years. Every time that I had an interaction with one of the people of our community, and like one of the top interactions is the one we had together, I actually realized that the reality is quite different, and that a lot of people out there, aside from their facade and their persona of I'm nailing it and I'm crushing it, they have their packages, they have their issues. There is a lot of, I think, we could name it a pandemic of mental health, lack of mental health, especially in the tech industry, especially this year. That is a shit show out there.
Yes.
I have my fair share of mental health challenges that I had in the past and got out of them recently. I know you have your fair share. We will talk about everything today. So I thought, okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room a little bit,
Yeah.
because I start getting a little pissed out of all this pretentiousness out there. Let's have a true conversation about that. So yeah, that was the reason. To answer your second question without ranting too much, psychology, I basically wanted to explain myself, explain my family, explain people around me, and yeah, that was the reason. Also, because I'm getting older, I wanted to have a plan B for the future. If shit hits the fan, I'm like, okay, can I do that?
Has it not hit the fan already? Like I'm looking around at
I
the
just need to
last
deliver my
18
thesis.
months.
I still have my thesis though.
Yeah, so that's great. I mean, I think a lot of people do go and study these things to understand themselves. I think there's a lot of people that, like the analogy of the duck on the pond, like they look like they're gliding easily around, and then, you dig a little deep or you look underneath the surface and they're paddling like mad. And I think that you touched on something that really enrages me, and that's toxic positivity. I'm excited when people are winning, especially if it's people in my peer group, because obviously I want, rising tides and all that. I do firmly believe in that. I like my competitors and my peers, like we share leads, referrals, clients, So when people are genuinely succeeding, I'm very, very genuinely happy for that. But sometimes I've even seen posts where people are saying, oh, if a copywriter, for example, isn't really busy or is willing to give you a discount, they must be bad. If they're not booked up for months, then they must be bad at their job. Well, that might have been true when the market was a bit different. I mean, even then it's not necessarily true, because not some people are starting out. But that aside, it's just a horrible thing to say. Isn't that just a horrible thing to put out there? Like, if people are not fully booked, then they're trash or they're not good at their job. Like, in a climate where so many people are struggling. Also, there's an awful lot of talent out there where whole marketing teams got laid off. There's incredible talent out there. Just because somebody, and a lot of people might be just new to freelancing, like you and I, we're used to contracting, and sometimes it still gets you down when things are awful, don't get me wrong, but like we are a little more maybe battle hardened to an extent to that feast or famine cycle. But a lot of people are coming into freelancing from having been in house full time, and now they're just thrown into this kind of like meat machine. I don't know, like I feel like it's like the sausage, like meat grinder kind of LinkedIn. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth kind of breaking down some of the BS, because I know really freaking talented people out there that are not fully booked, and they absolutely are amazing and they have the proof. So that's something that sort of definitely winds me up. If I'm going to get angry about something, that will be it for today.
You've touched something very, very important, because there was a research, I think 10 years ago, that was basically proving that Instagram is responsible for depression on teenage girls. So there was a direct correlation between depression, the use of Instagram for a specific segment of society, and I think that LinkedIn is actually going there for professionals at the moment.
Professional, yeah. It's the
Exactly.
professional version, you're right.
Exactly.
It's where we go, like we go there for inspiration, and you can come away sometimes feeling much, much worse, right? You go there to connect, network, maybe hoping to make connections that will strengthen your business or to learn something. And you can, much like a teenage girl going to Instagram, looking at people that they aspire to be like, perhaps, and then feeling like you're coming up short all the time. And that's really detrimental to anyone's mental health. that feeling of coming up short is a very familiar one. And now, I know we'll talk about it later, but now I understand a lot more about why I've always felt that way.
Absolutely. And I felt that way as well. As you said, lots of people feel shame to actually say, you know what, I didn't have a good month, or I didn't have a good year, or I would appreciate some help. It feels like asking for help or admitting that it's not a good year, while just to normalize that it's a shit show again out there. Lots of people, thousands of people are laid off. All these thousands of people, most of them are becoming freelancers. The competition is extreme, super fierce, and in the same time, the companies themselves are in a preservation mode. They start to they cut costs down. So there is a huge increase in supply and a decrease of demand in the same time. So it's difficult for everybody. Let's address that openly, because the next person that will actually say something along the lines, I'm crushing it, or so honored to be that and this and that, or excited to be invited there, like I will punch them in the face. Mentally, at least.
I saw a really honest post that I really enjoyed recently. It was actually a copywriter, and he talked about people living off of we're still living off of dry crackers out there. Is anyone seeing any green shoots? And I was like, one this week, and it's like, it's not a huge thing, we're not now. It's more a case of, it's not like, wow, I've won this big client and it's this many figures. It's like, I have a deal. I have a lead, and I'm saying it like that as a kind of I'm sick of ramen noodles. That I do actually see change around. I do see some changes coming. Doesn't mean it's going to fix everything for everyone. So I'm seeing more business, more B2B SaaS, hiring devs. And then I saw them hiring more product marketing people, and then I'm seeing a few more people hire copywriters, but it's not an upswing that's enough to deal with everything. And it doesn't solve the underlying health issues that being out of work, feeling useless, feeling not enough, is that can cause people real long-term damage. So even when the market recovers, maybe they're not in the best place to seize or opportunities, or to even recognize that they are worthy of those opportunities. Because I think we've both been there, where that self-doubt creeps in. You start to wonder, what am I doing? Do I have a place? Should I have a place at this table? I mean, tell me, you've been through some of these feelings yourself. I mean, we've talked a little bit about burnout, for example. I know that's, something that people mention. Me, I've never really understood the difference between what's burnout versus your general exhaustion, anxiety. I mean, is it in the DSM? Is it, I don't know. I genuinely don't know how that's defined. So I'd be really interested in how you would describe that, maybe from your own perspective, and see
absolutely.
if that resonates with other people listening.
Absolutely, yeah. Also, I was quite tired of the term burnout until I actually experienced the real burnout. I thought it was just exhaustion. I wouldn't connect with the term at all. I thought it was like other mental health terms that we overuse. And probably it is, if I'm honest. It is one of the terms that just because I need some vacation or I don't like my boss, we're like, probably you're not. Because if you are burnt out, you will know it. I knew it. I mean, I didn't know it at the beginning, but I realized it retrospectively. What burnout meant for me is that I literally had physical symptoms of my stomach was a mess, and I had too much anxiety to even open my laptop. In the idea that I would join a meeting where I would have even the mildest discomfort of social exposure, I would have physical symptoms. It felt like panic. So
But aside from the stomach, like did you experience other physical symptoms? Because I have panic attacks, for example.
mhm.
So I'm wondering, like, if there are other. I mean, the stomach thing sounds really horrible, right? So that's a very scary feeling if
Yeah.
you're about expected to like join a call and be an expert and all of this.
I remember I was working at this time, and the every time I would join a meeting, you would see a person that is resigned, totally resigned. I would get into meetings, and I would just barely talk. I was totally distracted, but not the type of distraction that you have because you're bored. The type of distraction that you have because you are very avoidant of the situation. So I really didn't want to focus into the conversation because it felt like my mind couldn't stand even minor discomfort. I just had to sit on a pillow at this time, and there was no other alternative. I only had to sit on a pillow. I didn't work. After that, I just stopped. I did other stuff, and I just sat on my savings, which thankfully they were decent to support me, at least for some time, until they weren't. But yeah, I mean, it took almost a year for me.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it took almost a year
That's
where I
a
was
long
basically,
time. Like that's a
yeah,
long time to be stuck in
mm,
that.
yeah.
And did you, I mean, would you say like the feeling was, the experience was the same for that whole year? Like the same sort of physical and mental experience, or did things change or get worse or better? Like how are you talking to me now? Like we're on a live, people can be watching and judging or whatever, now.
I
So
mean,
are you happy to tell me a bit about, that
yeah,
sort of from it starting through to like how you are today?
absolutely. I mean, I'm only sharing my part, my experience. And my experience wasn't just I was being overworked. And I don't think that you get burned out because you're being overworked. I think you get burned out if you hate what you're doing at a certain time. So it basically feels like you are climbing a mountain. So at the time that this happened, I had a lot of personal issues, like very, very serious personal issues. I was going through a very, very serious and painful divorce. Okay, here it is. I had all the shit of a very painful divorce, and I
Yeah.
had to work in the same time, and I had to bear the bullshit of people that everything that they would tell me was extremely small for me. So if we are going to improve this metric, I was like, I give zero fucks about your metric, and I literally gave zero fucks about their
Yeah.
metrics. I didn't care at all. I
Yeah.
pretended that I care for quite some time because the ball needed to roll. But at some point, I was so it could show, it would show that I just didn't like it. I was resigned, um,
Yeah.
and I didn't have any motivation. I lost my purpose. I basically forgot the reason I was doing that. That was reinforced by another personal experience, which I'm not sharing because I'm on a very oversharing mode. I'm literally sharing that, even if I'm feeling a little uncomfortable sharing those things, because I'm pretty sure that people will find themselves into this experience, and I really want that to be helpful. I think there is always a little bit of an imposter syndrome behind every super hardworking person. Most of us being super hardworking, we it feels like we want to prove something to someone. So all these extreme workaholics, I mean, being workaholic isn't natural, isn't healthy. So if you are workaholic, good job. I'm also going towards that at the moment. But you either are in love with a purpose or you try to prove something, because you cannot really persuade me that writing the top conversion copy is the purpose of your life. Like, it's cool, I get it, it's very cool, it's fun, it's cool, I like it, but it's not like it's Nelson Mandela and it's Helen writing copy, or it's Aggelos optimizing product funnels.
And when someone's eventually reading my eulogy, I really hope that the majority of the material doesn't come from my career, just such that it is. So I guess there's like, I think that's quite interesting. I think I definitely relate to the, things happening in your personal life are so big that everything else seems pathetic. That with the stress and the emotional and mental health struggle, for somebody to be caring about this bit of copy on their page, or whether you use this word or that word, tweak that, it suddenly, should I talk about myself? I'm like, I could talk about myself, but I have ADHD and I have a tendency to, this is another thing. So now I have ADHD. I'm like super conscious of like, if I say, oh, I relate to that, and then I start a story, like that's a trait apparently we have that can be quite annoying. So like, so this diagnosis, I got it just a few, like at the beginning, earlier this year, and I'm 45. But yeah, now I'm like a little bit paranoid. Like, am I being too ADHD right now? If I say something's relatable and then I tell a story that's relatable, like, is that me being like taking over? So yeah, that's like a whole thing.
Tell me more about ADHD. I know your story firsthand. And also before, ADHD is also a term that is massively used nowadays. Everybody thinks they're ADHD. I know people that are prescribed with ADHD medication, even if they're not. It's a cool mental health thing as well, but that is quite annoying for people actually experiencing ADHD, which isn't just distraction. So tell us more about that.
No. Well, I can tell you what I know so far and from my own experiences. And I can also preface this massively by, we are not all the same. Yeah. So like there are traits, there's a proper test, there's a proper classification for it in the DSM. I have a bit of paper from my psychiatrist about it, but it's also really hard for people in certain places to get diagnosed. So I do sympathize with people who feel they may have ADHD or will talk about it without a diagnosis, because, in the UK, there's waiting lists for adults like years long. So I don't want to gatekeep the term. It doesn't offend me massively. I guess it will eventually get annoying, potentially. Like, how people started to say, oh, I'm so OCD because they like things neat and tidy. Whereas actual OCD as a condition can be really debilitating and terrifying. Yeah, I don't want to gatekeep the term, because a lot of people are trying to discover this without much assistance. So because I'm in Thailand, the journey was different. 17 in the UK, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and depression. And that's what I've thought has been the case my whole life, is something biological, like something like physical in my brain or chemical in my brain, rather than the result of like a trauma or something. So our personal experiences, and I think unfortunately, like, they're really common. What's not common is people talking about it. And I've had a situation where a boss, I only found out that he was on, he told me he was also on an SSRI, only because I brought up to him that I was on a particular medication for anxiety and depression. So, and he had never given any hints. He was my direct manager.
Yeah.
So I think, just by being open, I'm hoping that more people feel that they can have that conversation. And actually, subsequently, that same person has found out that they also have ADHD, I guess.
Oh.
We're finding out through each other, So about ADHD. So yeah, I didn't know I had ADHD until recently. So does my husband. So that's fun. we've been together 20 years. And I guess we both thought we were normal, whatever that is. But yeah, we both have family members with neurodivergent family members, and it's quite genetic as well. So that's one of the clues. But I've been seeing a psychiatrist for several years, as Aggelos knows, because I had a real horrible kind of resurgence of anxiety and depression. I was having, I was counting like 8 to 10 panic attacks a day while I was contracting in a kind of an almost full-time capacity with a company who were lovely. But the stress of it and the pressure of like the buck stopping with me for the revenue, for the majority of the revenue, even though it was a team effort, but I very much felt I was responsible for it, and therefore everyone's livelihood, and if I would make a mistake, or I would worry about mistakes I hadn't even made as well. That's part of the deal with anxiety. So the ADHD diagnosis doesn't mean that my depression or anxiety or panic attacks never happened or weren't real, but they are comorbidities for those who don't know much about it. I know, some of the people present know perhaps even more than I do. But what has happened is that since getting the diagnosis, and I also have chosen to go with medication. In my case, the common name for it is Ritalin, so it's a stimulant medication. But the decision to kind of go down that road was a simple one for me, because I'm already on a bunch of medication, and now I'm already tapering off the other medications quite easily, as this kind of takes over, if that makes sense. But the medication is not enough on its own. It's a rung on the ladder, and it's a hell of a lot that I'm learning. Everything I got taught about productivity is out of the window. And in a way, I'm so glad and I'm so relieved, because my whole life, the story has been, she's bright, but she doesn't try hard enough. I was, looking through old school reports, and it was a running joke. Like, my parents would, like, before parents' evening, the running joke, I have to go there. They used to dread it because they felt like they were going to get told, they're getting told off, right? About, there's this, she's bright, but she doesn't try hard enough. As teachers or colleagues in our, as we get older, or people around you can see you do some things very, very easily. Like, you might be very talented and seem very energetic and engaged with certain things, and they just can't understand why you can't just do that thing. And for us, it's it's a physical thing. So lacking dopamine, like physical thing that is like motivation juice. I'm sure there's a more technical term. So yeah, that's changing the way I view myself for the better, and it's hard to say how much it's changing my working habits, but it is having an effect. I don't know, like, if I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm nailing it or anything, but for example, let me take a prime example of people. One of the things that you'll hear from productivity people is, if you're struggling to get started that day, eat the frog is a term I've heard. Now, I happen to live in a country where eating frogs is like considered a brilliant thing, but it's used in cultures where people don't enjoy eating frogs. So the idea being, get the horrible thing that you're dreading out of the way, and then the rest of the day you'll be sailing. Now, for people with ADHD, it's kind of the opposite. Now, or from my experience and from the people that I've learned this technique to avoid, we actually need little on-ramps to build up our dopamine. So we don't, to start with the big bad thing, we'll just go into paralysis. We won't be able to do it. So I'll take a task that I find enjoyable, or that will give me a quick reward in my brain chemistry, because I either enjoy doing it or because it's a quick win. And I will sort of build those little steps up, and then you get it enough dopamine brain go-go juice to tackle the bigger thing. At some point, you just end up doing it. Like, I know that doesn't sound very strategic, and it isn't. But otherwise, we're mostly driven by fear of letting other people down. So deadlines are very, very important, but it's good to give people with ADHD a deadline that's sooner than the real deadline. Shame, fear and shame and running on cortisol is not good for your body or your mind. So trying to find ways to mitigate that is part of the challenge. Another thing that I'm just letting go the things that I just suck at. I just suck at keeping things tidy. I'm just letting it go. I'm kind of being more forgiving of myself of those things. And instead of trying so hard to correct the things that aren't that important in the grand scheme, lean into my strengths more. I don't know if that sounds like really cheesy or something, but like I guess I'm giving myself permission and and trying to break the narrative of what I've been told and what I've been telling myself for decades, that I'm just lazy. Accepting that if it's the right kind of task, or I set up the task in a way that it is enjoyable to me and focus on the things that I'm strong at, then I can outsource the things that I struggle with. Or, for example, my husband will be much better. He's the one that helped me rearrange my desk and the shelves so that I'm not just wall behind me and unplugging. Like that kind of task is hard. But yeah, a website, writing, digging into somebody's positioning and writing their website is fun and easy, which other people will find hard. So yeah, that's I guess the sort of some of the blessings and the curses of it.
It's Helen. It's an extremely interesting situation because it is called the ADHD, which has the AD, the attention deficit, while in reality, this is a little bit misleading because you said it yourself, is a dysregulation of dopamine. So ADHD people can actually reach extreme focus on things that they like, but then it all boils down to dopamine. I had the chance, the blessing actually, to interact with a person, very close person that has ADHD, and I was actually amazed by how ADHD manifests. And I mean, in her case, she would some tasks that she would achieve hyper focus, but then at the beginning of us getting to know each other and our relationship, I constantly was angry with her. And I was like, but why did you procrastinate that? Why did you forget that? And I honestly thought that she was ignoring me. And ADHD is affecting personal relations. I guess it's affecting client relations as well, because these are people too, even if they're harsh to us sometimes. So could you tell me a little bit more about how it impacts interpersonal relationships?
Yeah. Do you mean like at home or at work? Like, shall I?
Whatever.
I mean, at home, my husband has known me for 20 years. He's used to it. I guess like with friends, I'm quite lucky. Well, I guess the ones that have stuck around are used to me being, some people in the past have dropped me for being flaky. But I'm also the friend that you can call. I'm the one friend that if you call me at 3 a.m. in the morning and you need me, I'll be there. But I might not be the friend that like, oh, today is a party and, and I just don't feel like I just can't do it that day. I just can't get my act together. But when it comes to something that is important, I think that we're extremely loyal and empathetic. I think I can talk a little bit about one thing that really saddens me is, as you know, as Aggelos knows, and I guess I'll reveal it here, my mum passed away last year before I knew that I had ADHD. And at some point, I was taking care of her to different levels because she was very poorly at times. And she got cross with me about things, such as I would order a bunch of stuff from Amazon, really none of it fits or is not right, but then I just put it back, like leave it lying on the dining room table, and I cannot send it back. I can do like really complex things, but I just couldn't do this thing. And they would sit there, and some of them, you know, like I couldn't return them anymore because I just left it so long. She'd be reminding me, she's like, why can't you just do this thing? I'm like, I literally didn't know. But now it's becoming a little clearer why I couldn't do certain things. So I guess it's a little frustrating that I didn't get to explain that to my mum. Like, hey, I'm sorry, I suck at that part and I'm not doing a great job of that part. You know, and I have a reason. I was just like, I just don't know. And yeah, like with personal relationships, I guess, like if somebody doesn't like me, they don't like me, and they're not just going to stick around as a friend. I guess what's more difficult is when you have working relationships, right? So to be honest, like I guess one of my strategies is actually that I've become a freelancer and that I will do pretty much anything but go full time with one client again or as an in-house person again. Every time it is, even with wonderful people around me, every time I've done that, it's made me very unwell. So with the freelancing and consulting, even when times are tough, you still get a bit of choice on who you work with and what kind of projects you work on. And you get variety, like ADHD people, we might be really fascinated by something, like so fascinated we won't shut up about it for a while, and then you know, I think talk about that drops after, you know, for another 12 months. So I think it's not ideal. It's not an ideal way for people who have ADHD to have to navigate the workplace, to have to go, I have to strike out on my own because I'm apparently unmanageable. Or if I'm given a task or a client that I just don't like or is not exciting to me, it's going to cripple me, essentially. Sorry, I know that's not probably a great term to use, but like it really feels physically painful to the point you just can't do it. And then you're beating yourself up about it and feeling awful. So yeah, in terms of relationships with clients, there have been times I've missed deadlines. I'm not proud of it. And now I'm much better at not doing that. You know, there are parts of the ADHD self where you have to just work on that. You can't ignore it. If that means you have to trick yourself with a fake deadline, then that's what you have to do. Yeah. Don't know if you heard all of that ramble, but yeah, there's like, in terms of like how to cope with it with interpersonal working relationships, I think my answer, which is not ideal, has been freelancing and consulting. I can't be bothered with the politicking of some businesses. I don't want to join a million meetings that are not related to something I'm excited about. With freelancing, I'm much more seen as an equal as well. I don't know if that's an ego personal thing or if that's like ADHD people, we're not generally good at being told what to do, especially if we think it's a stupid thing to do. Yeah, I think that's been my workaround, is like, well, if I do it this way, I can pick who I work with. We can check if we gel. I know who I'm going to be interacting with. I know if this is like if I think the product or the brand is exciting, then I'll do it. If I think it's a pile of poo, I don't have to take the project. Whereas like 11 years ago, I'd be working on, I worked at an ad tech company. I'd be managing ad campaigns. I might think, this is a poo product. You know, it's not great for motivation. Like, whereas other people would find other ways to find it motivating, I guess. But yeah, I have to be all in on something to get for people to get the best out of me.
Yeah, if I'm honest,
I don't know if I really answered the question or just went off on an ADHD tangent. That's another thing.
Just to put that in record.
Yeah.
We met like 4 years ago. We worked together, and since then you were my go-to person in every client that I had for conversion copywriting. I never figured myself what you were going through, and it was surprising me for me as well, because we had conversations. You have shared with me some things that you are going through, which in reality you were you were misdiagnosed. But I personally, as the contact of the companies that we were working together, never figured.
No. So you didn't like, so are you talking about at a time when you knew that I had mental health problems, or was there a time when we worked together and I hadn't told you that I actually was struggling with my mental health? Because I think that I'm quite quick to tell people stuff. I'm a bit of an oversharer.
I never saw ADHD in your deliverables, or you never missed any deadline, or having conversations with you about ADHD retrospectively, I realized that must have needed quite some effort from your side, especially for a few specific clients that we worked together that were extremely unbearable, and we both hated.
Yeah. Shall remain nameless. Lucky them. Yeah, look, no. So one interesting thing that happens, it sounds like a tangent, but you might have to bring me back to where this came from. ADHD in adults, especially like I have apparently an inattentive type, but now it's looking more like combined type. So I brought to the meeting this and this. Because when I'm on, one thing I noticed retrospectively is that I'm always moving around in my chair on Zoom meetings. And it became I was like, why do I do that? Like, you know, when you get those big Zoom meetings with like 30 or 100 people on, and I'm the only one like, woo, around in my chair. I'm like, I look like the inflatable wavy hand man outside the car dealership. So it's got, those sorts of outwardly obvious signs are actually a little bit more obvious now than they were then, because I'm giving I guess that they call it unmasking once you know. So like I've always been a nail biter and things like that. So yeah, so like playing with this under the table is like kind of helping me stay in the seat. That's like I guess like it sounds like a small thing, right? But it's about emotional regulation. It's about appearing normal, whatever normal is, like trying to blend in. And yes, we have, like many people with ADHD, we have a million things happening in our brain at once. And that's why some people, like, it comes out more obviously with stimming, or hyperactivity, depending how you look at it. And some of us, it's very internalized. So like loads of thoughts, and many of them not good. And there'll also usually be some tunes. So when I wrote one blog post, of course, one newsletter in March that I was meant to do monthly, never wrote another one about ADHD again. Which is very ADHD. But yeah, at the end, I put footnotes about like the tune, you know, the intrusive thoughts that I was having as I was writing it, about it not being good enough, and the tunes that were on repeat in my head. But it was just like one phrase of a tune. Or sometimes I'll have mashups of music in my head. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on in there that's not very useful. That can be really exhausting. So if we zone out sometimes, you know, or if we interrupt, so I'm a big interrupter, right? And that's, I think, partly wanting to empathize sometimes with people and show that we, you know, I feel like I've had a similar experience because we're quite empathetic. And then I also feel like sometimes if I don't blurt this out now, I'm going to forget, because there's like all those monkeys with symbols in my head and all these other dialogues. And yeah, so I thought that was just like normal anxiety brain, but it's normal ADHD brain. So like it's just a different operating system.
Someone has
still learning to drive it.
Has described the ADHD to me like you have 35 tabs open on your browser, and one of them is actually playing music, and you're not sure which one.
You don't know which one. Yeah. This is also, you will also see this on our actual computers as well, that we have a million tabs open. Like we joke about it amongst ourselves, like our emotional support tabs, like, because it's almost like leaving yourself a trail of breadcrumbs as well. Like, Because if you have a thought, you open a tab, but if you close that, then you're going to forget that you had that thought and da, 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 da. But yeah, it is similar. My husband described it as like an orchestra tuning up, that cacophony. That's the way he's described it. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I said because I'd actually spoken to my shrink like that, I had some people who are neurodivergent say, if you're relating to so much of these things, I'm saying maybe you should go and just get a test. And I was like, oh, it's because it's overlapped. So many symptoms overlap with anxiety. And I sort of brushed it off again because of it's a trend thing. So I guess maybe that's why I'm kind of defensive about that, because I think there's even a book called It's Not an Effing Trend, which I really must buy. So yeah, like that sort of gatekeeping of it might have set me back several years. I might have known much sooner. I might have dealt with some of the hard things I've dealt with in the past few years, like taking a year out of business to care for my mum, losing my mum, pet death, one of which is under horrible circumstances. I won't sit here because I'm not here to make people feel worse. Yeah, lots of hardship. And I wonder now, what would I have had better coping tools in place for those if I'd have known sooner? So there's a kind of a grief attached to, there's a relief and there's grief attached to the diagnosis. But I would absolutely encourage everyone to go and get checked if you can. And if you can't get tested, there's nothing wrong with taking a look at some of the books, taking a look at some of the people. Danny Donovan is wonderful on TikTok. There's other influencers and other ADHDers that are way ahead of this on me, and go and see what systems they're using. You can just take some of the systems that they're using and try it. So instead of trying it, my little example of trying to get the big ugly thing out of the way, just try giving yourself some of the light fun tasks and see if your brain will take flight once it's got a bit of wind under its wings. So go and try those things and stop trying to force yourself into the planners, the routines. A routine, you asked me earlier today about routine. I can't do routine. I loathe routine. I actually fear it, and probably because I fail at routine. So it's actually become something I'm afraid of because it's something I fail at. So there's that. Wow, I'm going really deep here. Sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame around it. Not talking about it, but there's a lot of shame that comes with what you perceive as your deficiencies. On the negative side, there are positives. We can talk about the positives, but I don't want to do that toxic positivity thing with ADHD either. Yes, there's some wonderful sides to it. We're creative, we're empathetic, we spot patterns faster than other people. If it's something we're passionate about, we'll get it done faster and better than anybody else. But it comes with a whole load of warning labels. So I don't know what it's like to drive any other brain though. So it's, I don't know how, I don't know if now we could get into philosophy if we're not careful, but, I don't want to avoid solipsism and all of that. But I don't know if I have all of the language available to describe it any more than you have all of the language available to describe your innermost experiences. Yeah. I should be asking you questions. I've talked about myself loads now.
Helen, I think we've got a couple of more minutes. We're getting to the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and if we want to do one more for Aggelos and then go from there and wrap up.
Yeah, I did have a list of questions, but are they anywhere near me? No, probably not. Yeah, we talked. I don't know if I heard the answer to how do you know if it's burnout or one of the other disorders. What should somebody do? If they think, if they start to recognize some of those symptoms, that you mentioned, feeling unwell, the physical symptoms, or feeling disengaged, thinking everything's really tiny, why am I even here on this meeting? If they're starting to experience things like that, now you know what you know, I'm guessing you wouldn't say like the best thing to do is to wait until it comes to a head and you have to spend a year out of work living off your savings. Like, if you could go back, is there something you would do differently?
If I'm honest, no, Helen. You just have
Really?
to. Maybe I was doing therapy, so I did what I had to do. No, maybe I would say I don't know. I have no idea. Uh,
Yeah.
Anyway, I think, as you said before, burnout isn't really an official term. You could say it's depression, depressive symptoms, or something else.
The
But
stomach thing is like an anxiety thing for some people as well. Like the anxiety, like my husband, for example, he has a lot of stomach issues.
mhm.
And now he's like got the ADHD meds. He doesn't, and he's got certain more coping mechanisms for the right things. He doesn't get so many stomach problems anymore. So like that mind body thing, like, yeah, it's interesting. So you wouldn't change anything. You would go through the therapy. You would take the time out. God willing, having the savings. But you
I was just
ultimately, the real answer is you don't
I
know,
was just
right?
having a good time. I was just having a good time, and
Yeah.
I just didn't want to return back to the uncomfortable client interactions and colleague interactions, and that wasn't something that lasted for 15 days. So you could say it was a little clinical, if we can name it, but. Yeah, there are a lot of people that experience similar things out there. Honestly, I don't know what to advise them, if it's worthy for me to give any advice. All I can say is that I've been there. Maybe the one thing that I could say is I think all digital people need to find something outside of work that recharges them. Is that a sport? Is that fishing? Is that developing another profession on the side, something more tangible? Yeah, I mean, we are in front of screens for a lot of years, and that is a little depressive by itself.
Yeah.
So actually doing something outside of screens is always very beneficial, and it has been very important for me.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this has been an amazing conversation, and just, I mean, all I can describe it as is very real and very raw. And I appreciate you guys
It's
being
what we
so
promised.
open with everything. No, really, I think this is super important for people to hear, because I think all of us are exposed too much to everybody's highlight reels on LinkedIn. And I don't think people realize that, hey, the highlight reel may look good, but real life may be a different story. So I think it's incredibly important to share these kinds of things. And thank you both so much for basically, the bravery it takes to do this. I mean, because this is definitely a topic that most people aren't comfortable with. So this is something that we really appreciate you guys stepping up. But I do want to be respectful of your time. We are a little bit past the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and wrap things up. Everyone, thank you so much for attending, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye, all.